Wedding themes is what we're after, and we've got a nice little prank here from James Quinton from Burnham-on-Sea in Somerset. If you're getting married this weekend or soon, we don't recommend any of the following. Dear Minister Mayo, due to your recent request for marital-style confessions, I feel convulsed to put rather expensive and flash pen to cheap bit nasty paper. My confession centres around the wedding of my oldest brother. Oh, I ought to say, says Stephen, I am one of 5 brothers of Irish stock. Okay, now my oldest brother is Leslie, who for reasons best known to himself left it until he was 36 to marry, meaning that he was the last of our clan to wed. Bad move. Nasty stag night wedding-style tricks had got progressively worse from wedding to wedding within our brotherhood. Boys will be boys, as they say, and we certainly didn't let this theory down. Not satisfied with teenage tricks such as snails down the back of youngest brother Niall and a good pat on his back for being such a great fellow, our marital frolics were far more vindictive. John, the second eldest and first to marry, suffered only a very minor discomfort. He had help written on the soles of his shoes, which is rather pathetic and rather boring. Followed by myself, second to marry, dustbin full of water sewage on car roof after reception. Not too bad. This is him saying not too bad. Niall had the misfortune of waking up in Shepherd's Bush police station 1 hour and 5 miles away from his wedding. Yet the best was yet to come. Leslie's wedding followed ours by over 4 years. Plenty of time to plan. Plotting these things, incidentally, is often as much fun as carrying them out. Ideas range from the silly, such as tying him to the distance sign at Land's End, to ridiculous, like leaving him tied naked to the roof rack of his future in-law's car in Surbiton. Not a wise thing at all. This is what we settled for, Simon. I was the best man, so I was nominated to carry out the dastardly deed. For some crazy reason, Leslie asked me to book a hotel room for them to stay the night. Himself and his rather attractive future wife, that is. So I found a room in a good hotel at a good price for him and accidentally mislaid the key when I went to look over it. Ha ha. This is just a foretaste of what's to come. Leslie was a rather nervous person, particularly about the wedding and the wedding night. Not for girly reasons, such as, will I look good, will I get my lines right, etc., but because he'd ring-led...
I didn't know you had lines on your wedding night.
Apparently so. We always have to follow the script. But because, mainly, he'd ring-led many of the previous wedding frolics and feared that we had it in for him. I assured Leslie that he had little to worry about, as we were all many years wiser and we were above such childish games. To Leslie's astonishment, the stag night went without a hitch, and the wedding ceremony went perfectly. Leslie and Anne, his new wife, thanked me wholeheartedly at the end of the evening reception. I really thought that you lot were up to something, confessed Leslie. Anne agreed, and I got a peck on my cheek and a pat on my back, and the couple left for their consummation, says here. The following morning, Leslie and Anne emerged from bed and ordered breakfast. 10 minutes later, an efficient lad arrived at the door and wheeled in a trolley full of breakfast goodies. He then said, "Breakfast for 2? To Leslie's horror, a muffled voice emitted from beneath the bed. "No, better make it 3. I was so full of laughter I couldn't run, and Les gave me a good duffing over. He's since forgiven me, though. Now will you? I don't intend to do such a nasty thing again. Anyway, I've run out of brothers. I expect complete absolution. By the way, it was a most entertaining night. Yours piously, James Quinton. I'll say 5,000 Hail Marys, if you help my case. Well, it's a great sketch, and I expect that to turn up in some TV sitcom. I forgive you, certainly. Nice one."
Oh, it's classic. It's so good, I've got to forgive it.
Nice time. Better make it 3, Diane.
I'm speechless. Absolutely no forgiveness at all. And your brothers have got permission to come round and give you a good kicking.
He's already had a duffing over. What about our studio management collective? Forgiveness? Yes. Oh,
no. Say no.
Anyway, I better not say who this one's from. Stain Street. Oh, I better not say that either. Anyway, somewhere in West Sussex. Father Simon, Brother Pete, and vegetarian sport pin-up Diane. I'm quite sure if I followed that. Anyway, I write to seek absolution, not for myself, but for an ex-colleague of mine who badly needs it. It's probably better not to release my name, as those concerned will probably come after me with a gun, right? So I probably shouldn't have been as specific as I was. Sorry, Jonathan Dingle. Anyway, the story goes back to 1989, when I was working for a charter airline who have since gone to that great hangar in the sky. We flew big aeroplanes, DC-10s, and little aeroplanes, 737s, and we're all one great big happy family. Not. I worked in the commercial department at the time and was busy working out the velocity of different elastic bands when pinged at the sales manager's neck when we had a call from the ops department. That's the operations department, of course. It seemed that one of our aircraft had flown to Faro in Portugal and had then got what we called tech, which was airline speak for broken. They thought I'd better come down as it looked serious, and if it was going to be broken for a long time, we couldn't get away with having hundreds of passengers in various departure lounges around Europe being fobbed off with delayed because of operational reasons and £2.50 meal vouchers. We would need to charter a replacement aircraft, which was supposed to be my job. By the time I had walked into the ops room, the engineers in Faro had looked at it and pronounced that the aeroplane was snafu'd. Situation normal, all fouled up. Of course. And the even better news was that the broken widget wasn't kept in Faro, and we would have to have it flown down, which meant an unscheduled overnight stop for plane, crew and passengers. I began the delightful job of finding hotels to put everybody into for the night. However, the story had really begun to unfold in Portugal. One of the hostesses, we called them hosties, and we should call this particular one Diane, had approached the captain in private and said that she would have to be flown back. She couldn't possibly stay in Faro overnight. The captain had explained that as per company policy, tough. Basically, the crew take the chance of this sort of thing happening. It's an unexpected event. It could happen absolutely every time they fly. And if we were to fly her back, then it would leave the crew one short and be very unfair. At this point, she burst into tears and had to be consoled. Swearing the captain to secrecy, she explained the problem and asked if someone could nip round to her house to sort it out. As anyone who's worked in the airlines will know, swearing a captain to secrecy is a quicker way of spreading the news than Reuters. The captain rang operations whilst I was still there, and we watched the duty officer as he listened to the problem in amazed silence. Straight after putting the phone down, he rang the police. Unfortunately, he did so in a crowded room full of eager ears who listened as he explained the problem to the police. There was a stunned silence, followed by a short giggle. At that point, the room collapsed in laughter. What's going on, I hear you ask?
What's going on?
It transpired that whilst Diane had flown to Faro for what she thought was a short afternoon trip, she'd left her boyfriend in the wardrobe at home. Tied up in the wardrobe at home. Not wearing anything, tied up in the wardrobe at home, apart from an apron and a Mickey Mouse mask. And he needed to be released because he couldn't possibly stay that way for 24 hours. Funny people right in for this. I seek forgiveness firstly for the duty officer who announced the problem to half the staff of the airline, and secondly for the captain who probably could have called the police directly, thereby saving much embarrassment. But it turned out that the police, after breaking down the door, had been unable to unlock the padlocks and had to call the fire engine out to assist. Forever after, Diane was subjected to little jokes like, "Oh, sorry, she can't come now, she's a little tied up at the minute," and so on. If you do read this out, can I have the first edition of your book, because I've got the others? Okay, and a signed picture of Diane in her vegetarian sport page pin-up pose. What is going on? Anyway, obviously people working for the airline are a little pervy around the edges in many ways. Anyway, so a very dodgy story to bow out on. Peter,
Well, yes, very dodgy, I'm afraid. No forgiveness on that from me.
You're not into being tied up in cupboards?
Absolutely not.
With an apron?
Anywhere else, yes, but...
That's right. In an apron and a Mickey Mouse outfit. What about you, June? Because do you like that kind of thing?
Oh, I do indeed, and forgiven.
Right. Now, studio manager's, of course, legendary for this kind of behaviour. What do you reckon, Rachel and Gary?
As it's Friday, we're going to forgive.
Yeah, that's very nice. Diane?
Suitably embarrassed.
Bury St Edmunds, Suffolk. Now, a number of people might think, yeah, someone's made it up, but actually this has the ring of authenticity. Let me say the handwriting looks as though this is right. I'll just do it from the beginning. Elizabeth Jane Griffiths, age 73, has written this in. Dear Breakfast Crew, I often listen to your programme in the mornings. It's such an entertaining show. I happened to hear this confession a few weeks ago. Someone was telling how he got caught in an old lady's home. Do you remember this? Dressed in a satanic party suit, and how he scared her almost witless. Do you remember that story? Elizabeth Jane Griffith says, I have reason to believe I am the very Mrs. Griffiths he was referring to. So now that he's come clean, I will too. You see, I suspected all the time that little Debbie, the neighbour's daughter, had been romping on my bed with her boyfriend. She must have been quick enough to get out, but he, clumsy boy as he was, didn't make it when I came in. He was probably still putting all his clothes on, says Elizabeth Jane Griffiths, age 73. However, I never told Debbie's parents. It would have spoiled the fun. And it was worth seeing Debbie's face every time she saw me. She looked so guilty, the poor girl. Sounds like the referee's reason for not booking Gazza at the weekend. However, this boyfriend of hers used to park his car just outside my gate. Such insolence, I thought, and decided to do something. So every time when the car was there, I used to pour things like washing up liquid, cider and my eye drops into the petrol tank. Never a lot, just a little bit at a time. And I made sure that nobody ever saw me doing it. I wonder whether he knew why his car was always behaving like a kangaroo every time he left Debbie's house. Eventually he changed his car, and I couldn't be bothered to find out which his new one was, so I stopped doing it. Now I suppose we're even, aren't we? I suppose I need to be forgiven as well. Yours faithfully, Elizabeth Jane Griffiths, age 73. A follow-up story just to make it completely even. I think that's a true letter. I think, Elizabeth Jane Griffiths, you're a sneaky old lady. Of course we forgive you, of course we do. It's Confessions, Simon Mayo, London W1N 4DJ.
This story has a history, actually. Believe it or not, I've never actually read this out before. This got read out by Philip Schofield, who was filling in for me on the show, the way Phil would. I was off for a couple of weeks, and I'd always decided that this story was just a bit too much. Perhaps I wouldn't get away with it. But I left it in the pile, and Phil thought, right, well, I'll read it out then. And lo and behold, the BBC complaint log was chock-a-block. So if you're listening down there in the phone room, you're going to get busy. It all started with a story from Colin from Towcester in Northamptonshire. Dear Simon, this confession is aimed at an unknown Cornish farmer, we didn't stay long enough to find out his name, who lets a field out to campers. 4 of us, Brett, Russell, Steve and I, pitched our tent in his field on one Friday, shortly before opening time. Well, at about 11 o'clock, they poured out of the village inn, and we were wobbling back up the moonlit lane, when Steve thought he'd sussed out a shortcut across the fields. Walking anywhere wasn't easy by then, but we climbed over the gate and set out across the grass. Cornwall, as you know, has got loads of abandoned tin mines, and we'd only gone a little way when we stumbled into a flimsy fence around a very big black hole. The fields were dotted with open shafts, and this one was a particularly large one. Then someone had the bright idea of seeing how deep it was, so we tossed a stone in and listened for the sound. Nothing. So then a rock gets lobbed in. Again, not a sound. So then Steve and I levered a boulder out of the ground and manhandled it over the edge. Again, not a peep. This was a big hole. We were determined, though, to find out how deep it was, but there isn't a lot lying around in your average field that's going to make a lot of noise. Then Brett and Russell discovered a railway sleeper and tossed that into the void. So we're all craning forward around the edge for some sound, when suddenly this chain comes snaking through the grass between us, and a goat with a clump of grass in its mouth goes flying straight past us and down into the hole. Obviously the farmer tethered the goat to the sleeper to stop it wandering down one of the shafts, but he hadn't banked on the sleeper going in first. The goat didn't even have a chance to bleat. That sobered us up right there. We left early the next day for Devon. No mines there, as far as we were aware. Yours guiltily, Colin. So there it is, the most famous confession, the goat confession as it became known, and sorry tale. Okay, you can phone the duty officer if you want to complain. Let's go, though, first of all, to the Confessional Collective, see how they rate that confession, the story of the dead goat, which we imagine is dead anyway. Yes, Sean.
Well, it's only a bit of drunken revelry, so forgiven.
Typical student, thank you. Jenny now.
Well, my family has got 5 goats, so I'd be in big trouble if I forgave.
So not forgiven?
I'm afraid not.
Okay, thanks. Magnus, then. Magnus next.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, well, no, I'm from Cornwall, so there's absolutely no way I can forgive him that.
So that's 1 tick and 2 crosses, so that's no forgiveness at all?
No.
Thanks, Magnus,
okay.
And thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Sean, for being our Forgiveness Collective this week. And if you want to do it, Simon Mayo, 1FM, London W1N, 4DJ.